ba boom bum ba boom bum boom ba dum boom boom ba boom bum ba boom bum ba boom bum. But I am I.
Okay.
Yeah? Ready? Okay. So we are approximately 10 lines from the top on page Tes, and the line starts with Aval Bechinas Pnimis Hakav. We discussed yesterday the principle of Chitzenius Hakav, and the effect of the Tzimtzum and so forth. I'm sure there is always more to discuss and point out, but we will suffice ourselves with this so far. And we are pointing out that there is Pnimis Hakav and Chitzenius Hakav. Although we're talking about Oir, and Oir per se is something which is representative of Etzem, of Atzmus. And yet there is Chitzonius and Pnimius. And we said that the Chitzonius, that is that which is affected by the Tzimtzum. And the Tzimtzum, how is the effect of the Tzimtzum? That there is something that's coming forth lachutz. And once there is something that's coming forth lachutz, that already gives it a metzius. Metzius means that it's identifiable by its own presence rather than by the presence of the Yetzer. That already gives it a metzius. Regardless of the fact that it is pointing to its source, but its identity is based on its own presence rather than on the source. This is Chitzenius. Aval Bechinas Pnimius Hakav. Here on page Tes, I didn't count the lines, it looks like about 10 lines from the top. Aval Bechinas Pnimius. But the Bechina, or Pnimius Hakav. Again, I want to call your attention to this expression, Bechinas Pnimius Hakav. The reason that Bechina is used is, as we pointed out many times, it is not that you can take the kav and split it in half and say, okay, here's Mr. Pnimis, here's Mr. Chitzenius. It is within the same kav, the same oir. There's a bechina of Chitzenius and a bechina of Pnimius. There is a tendency towards expression and a tendency that does not have that element that is part and parcel of its source. So
it's the mamutza between the etzem and everything else. No.
No, the kav is a mamutza.
Right.
The kav is
Right.
in true, but the pnimius hakav is pnimius hakav. It's not a mamutza. It doesn't. The pnimius does not bring on the chitzenius. Mamutza means something that brings out something else. Pnimius stays in pnimius.
Right, but because the fact that it has a inner and an outer.
That's
quality,
the kav in general, not
Right.
pnimius.
Not
the bechina of pnimius hakav.
Right.
The kav in general
right
has both parts.
has both, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes it a mamutza in a sense.
Right.
It brings the oil out.
Right.
Ava bechinas pnimius hakav. But the bechina of pnimius hakav, again, although we are talking about the kav, And Kav, by definition, is quote unquote formed first after the Tzimtzum. So Pnimis Hakav is also after the Tzimtzum. Nevertheless, this Bechina of Pnimis Hakav Einoi Bebchinas Yitzio v'his Galus Chutz Liatzmusei. Again, Bebchinas does not have that tendency of Yitzio v'his Galus, of coming forth and expressing Chutz Liatzmusei, to have a presence and to express something Chutz, beyond the Yetz. Ki, rather, Gam Liachar HaTzimtzum, even after the Tzimtzum, Harei Hu Kolul Be'atzmusei Yisborech, it continues to be kolul, incorporated and part and parcel of the Etzem, Hatzmusei Yisborech, K'moi Koidem HaTzimtzum, just as what it was before the Tzimtzum. And now it is challenging, but this challenge is something that we have to accept, to understand how it is that an oye that comes to the Tzimtzum and remains kolul be'atzmusei. Moi kedem HaTzimtzum, just as before the Tzimtzum. So we can discuss it here, but we'll leave it till we get more wishes from them. The root of this principle. In other words, how come there are these two aspects in the Kav? What is the question? There's these two aspects of the Kav. These two aspects are formed as a result of the Tzimtzum. No, it's not formed as a result of the Tzimtzum. If going through the Tzimtzum, there's an aspect that becomes a Metzias, and there's an aspect that stays internal, that means that there is in the initial oil that goes through, that is put through the Tzimtzum, some kind of a root element that provides for these two results.
Mm-hmm.
It's not merely the effect, the external effect. I think the Rebbe once said that you take a tomim and put him any place in the world, he'll remain the same. There's a word from the Belzer Rebbe, as a matter of fact. I think I repeated it.
A tamim is a pure man.
Huh?
A tamim is a pure man.
A tomim is a person, one who learned in Timchet Mim. It's called a tomim. That's the effect of that profound learning. That Belzer Rebbe was asked, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is sending out shluchim to bring Eden to Yiddishkeit. Why doesn't he do the same thing? To send his shluchim, his chassidim out? So he said, I'm afraid the chassidim will go out into the world and they'll get lost over there, and be affected. So they said, but the Lubavitcher is doing it. So he said, the Lubavitcher, wherever he is, he's in 770.
Is that what
There's something that now you have to understand. What's the root of it? What are these two elements on the pristine level? The Chitzoni is Hakav. That the Chitzoni of the Kav, who mibchinas Malchus the Ein Sof is representative, the aspect of Malchus the Ein Sof. Or mibchinas Yisoid Hane'elam. What is the Yisoid Hane'elam? Malchus the Ein Sof. The point is this: V'hainu. That means to say, mibchinas Ha'er Ein Sof Hashayach Lo'olam Mois. That actually this Chitzonis Hakav is of the Bechina, is of the quality, is the presentation or the revelation of the Oyer Ein Sof as it is in Oyer Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. Within the Oyer Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, there is an element Hashayach Lo'olamos that belongs to worlds. We will discuss it, Mitzvah Shem. In this oir, this aspect of the oir, even though we're talking about oir in soif, but in this aspect of the oir in soif, Paul had tzimtzum, the tzimtzum had an actual effect, li is ha'oir b'mchinas itzio v'his galus, so that the oil should become in that form or in that attitude of itzio of his galus coming forth and being producing itself and reveal itself. But the pnimis hakav, who? What does pnimis hakav represent? Sheshor shoi. This is the oil that's shor that is rooted b'bechinas tiferes hane'elam. From the Bechina of Tiferes HaNelam. The word Nelam in all of these instances refers to the fact that it is still before the Tzimtzum. Everything is Nelam. As we discussed the other day, within the Etzim there is everything and it's all Nelam. So the Pnimis Akav is Shorshoy. Mebechinas Tiferes HaNelam, it represents the union of Tiferes as it is in Ein Sof. V'yodua, and it is known, the Tiferes, that this quality of Tiferes, which is Bechinas Kav Emtzoi, which is the aspect of Kav Emtzoi, the middle line, the middle attitude. Shebechol Mokoim Hu B'Hishtavus. This middle perspective is everywhere B'Hishtavus equal. Ve'alkein, and for this reason, bebchino madregozu, in this bechino, in this aspect, loy Paul had tzimtzum. The tzimtzum had no effect. Ubechol mokoim, and everywhere, wherever it is identifiable, hu bechinas atzmus ha'oir. It is the bechina of the etzim of the oir, bekolu be'atzmusoi, and thus it remains essentially the etzem oir and remains connected and contained within the etzem. So let us try and get a little bit of a handle on this. The handle that we are given over here is the union of Tiferes and the union from Kav HaEmtzoi. HaEmtzoi, the middle pathway. The Rambam says that what is Derech Havaya, Derech Hashem? Derech Hashem, this is in Halacha. Derech Hashem is the mitzvah, the middle between the two extremes. And he describes all kinds of different situations and examples. Why is the middle of the two extremes Derech Havaya, called Derech Hashem? And we are now talking from the perspective of its root quality. Sure, it looks very nice. Derech Mitzvah is mamash beautiful. One does not go into any extremes. Everything is in perfect balance. Derech Hashem, it's the total way. But why is it Derech Hashem? It's a beautiful way. It's a healthy way. It's a better way. What does Derech Hashem have to do with it? How does that relate to Hashem? So when you think about it, you realize the following. And I'll take an example from human experience. We always speak about the fact that a human being stands on 2 feet. An animal goes on all 4s. A serpent lies on its belly. We once explained that when the serpent was cursed, the serpent was also on feet, and it was cursed, and it fell, and Niktzatzu, it lost its legs, and it fell on its belly. It will go on your belly. So the question is, hey, the serpent is the most secure of all animals. A human being is the most vulnerable. His standing is the most unstable, insecure. The animal stands on 4. The serpent is the most secure. He can't even fall if he tried to. So what kind of curse is it? So now, going back to the human being, this is Derech Havaya. This is the real thing. The human being stands on 2. So we always say that he stands on 2. So he is like independent of the earth. He's not being held up by the earth, like the animal, earth dependent. It's his spirit that's holding him up. True. On the other hand, if he should be detached from the ground and just float in space, that's also not a human being. In other words, what is a human being? One who is attached to the ground and who functions on the ground. But he functions on the ground without being dependent on it to hold him up. What is holding a person up? The principle that's holding a person up is the sense that he has that his presence in the world is not usurped, is not sunk, so to speak, not part of the earth, not the world. He has to be here, but actually he is being held, he has a purpose. He has an independence. This independence he gets where? From his Creator. He has a mission. He represents the mission for which he is here, rather than the presence that he is here. And this is why he can stand on 2 feet and hold and stand firm, because what is in his mind and what gives him a sense of firmity of sense of security, a sense of reality. It's his mission rather than the support he gets from the earth. The animal is earth dependent. The malach is not ruled altogether. The human being, this is the real thing. This is Derech Havaya. He represents his maker's mission on the earth. And this is why he is able to combine both. He is on the earth, he is grounded, but he is not dependent. He's grounded and yet he remains independent. And this is why it's Derech Havaya, because this, to have this stance, is entirely representative and dependent on your sense of the presence of Havaya, of the godly presence. There's no other way you can do that. This is the Pshat. Derech HaMitzvah is Derech Havaya. Not just because Derech HaMitzvah is the right way, but because it is God dependent. It's only possible to relate to it. And now we go back to human experience. We all know that, for example, it comes to giving tzedakah. The easier path for a person, it's interesting, is either to close his wallet or to throw it open. To keep track and to judge when yes, when no, and what extent to go, that's challenging. And then from the worldly perspective, from a just a mitzias perspective, okay, here I have a good feeling. Here it is. Get out of me. I'm not giving anything. These are the two attitudes that are easy to relate to from a worldly perspective. To stand on the
To remain on this call, press 1.
Okay. To stand on a path and know, yes, I have to give, but I must not empty. I must do it responsibly. That requires a recognition that I'm on a mission. It's not my feeling that I'm expressing. I have to do the right thing. The right thing is what is given to me by my Creator. Bishop Shat Tiferes is Derech HaMitzvah, and Tiferes always remains kol be'atzmus. It cannot function outside of the atzmus, even though it has a function. In its functioning state, it is b'terech kol be'atzmus. After it seems so. I want to take this a little one step further. We'll have the full clarity of the meaning. We have many examples. The last example that we had from Halacha is this lending of an article, and he wants it back before the minimum time, and he says he can't have it back. And we explained what's behind that. How can you justify it? It's my article, I can't have it back. The answer is that yes, indeed, it is your article. It's your article by virtue of the grant, of the godly grant to you that you have this article. Everything that we own, ownership, the definition of ownership, as we discuss it all the time. But ownership is a godly phenomenon. It's not a worldly phenomenon. In the worldly phenomenon, it is on the animalistic level. I'm going to stand guard and you won't be able to take my thing. But that you have a principle of ownership, that is because the world is God's. And God provides for everyone to have his thing. So, looking from this perspective, what do we have? We have a world, and we say, no. The world is not independent of its creator. The principles that guide and that define activity in the world is not worldly. It's godly. The other example that we have to think about and understand, like I always point out, a person, a human being, who is on the state, health-wise, that he is functionally dysfunctional, and now he cannot produce anything. But he is alive. And his life is holy, is precious, and must not be tampered with. On what basis is that? The whole world says this is ridiculous. What value does he have? What does he contribute to the world? Pull the plug. The new medicine philosophy is this person, I'm going to give him ability to move around, but how long is it going to be? How long is it going to last? It's a waste of money. That is what happens when you look at things from a worldly perspective. Only if you look at it from a godly perspective, saying no, nothing is on a human level, nothing is part of the world. He is in the world, but it's not part of it. He represents a godly presence in the world, and therefore the measure, the judgment that applied to the human is totally different. It has to be looked at from a godly perspective. There's derech ha-mitzvah. Sure, it must not be wasted, but it has to be responsible. And responsibility, it doesn't end any place, as long as there is something to say. Even one moment of life is another moment of a godly presence. Thus is the pshat, that it can be after the tzimtzum and be kol be'atzmos, because it does not have a declaration of its own presence. Why? Because to start with, it is in the pnimius, it is in the tiferes. Yes, we'll talk again. The tiferes means it has no personal inclination, it has no inclination towards the left, no inclination towards the right. It is there because God is there. Therefore, wherever you draw it, even after the tzimtzum, it remains the same. This is it for this morning. Who was at the end? So how come he wasn't on the... Okay, this is it for this morning. Be well.